You're Japan's first Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt.
We were the only fighters in Japan that fought real fights. Even with a weight over 100 kilograms, we did not care about that because we believed we were the chosen ones. Talking a lot of smack like, do you know who we are? Before that match, my senior high school judo club captain had passed away. There's no guarantee that I will come back alive. I fought my best as if it was my last day. There's a risk you might get killed.
Your fight with Gordeau, were you just trying to find a way to finish?
I knew that my eye could not see properly. He grabbed the rope, so I could not take him down. During that period, he poked my eye.
Your eye injury, you kept that private for like a long time. Was that to help promote MMA and keep it alive without this controversy? About yourself, so can you tell me a little about like growing up? What was it like, and what sort of student you were like in school?
When I was a child,
Just like maybe your formidable years, so like maybe around like 8 to like 13, 14?
I was born in a village in Hokkaido's countryside with nothing but nature. So there's nothing really city-like, so I grew up playing with nature. There were no martial arts schools, nothing at all.
And so how did you gain an interest in fighting? Like I believe that you were doing wrestling and also learning judo in school, is that right?
That was a long time after. When I was a kid, I watched professional wrestling on TV because there were no martial arts at school. Yeah, I loved watching wrestling. So because I was a kid, I looked up to big guys like Baba and Inoki. So when I was in junior high school, there was a UWF organization with a more martial arts style, and I decided to go there. I was training to join a professional wrestling organization. I did it from when I was in junior high school student. So my parents and teachers told me that I should go to high school. So I decided to go to a high school with a wrestling club in Sapporo.
Was there like anyone particular that you were seeing in the wrestling scene that you idolized?
I really loved Mr. Baba and Mr. Tsuruta. I really loved them, but professional wrestling was said to be just a show. At that time, Mr. Inoki had fought various martial artists. Although it was professional wrestling, Mr. Inoki was heavily debated amongst adults. Do you understand the meaning of Mr. Inoki defeating other martial artists? Professional wrestling is not a lie. Mr. Inoki has been defeating other martial arts. Although it is pro wrestling, I understood later to be a theoretical debate.
Was that like so we have like the pro wrestling scene, and then I think that was kind of merging, and then they have like the Shooto scene, right? Was it like one of like the first sort of like big fighters, and that was like a tiger mask guy? Yeah, was he like one of the?
Yes, Tiger Mask is my teacher.
Oh, he's a teacher. Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
The identity of the superstar Tiger Mask is Mr. Satoshi Sayama, the person who created Shooto. In other words, the person who made MMA is him. The person who created competition MMA is Professor Sayama. It is actually older than UFC. At first, he was a professional wrestler, but Sayama seemed to really believe in professional wrestling. Even then, I knew it wasn't just that. Even for work, he put on the tiger mask, but I had a feeling that he would create mixed martial arts one day. Since Mr. Sayama created MMA, so I thought I wanted to train with him. There is something I do not want you to be mistaken. The truly first MMA is Shooto. The person who made professional wrestling revolutionary and MMA is the same person, Mr. Sayama. Can you believe it?
Yeah, I had only known about him from seeing some bouts of him fighting, but I haven't seen the of the pro wrestling stuff at all. So yeah, it's interesting to know. So he's like the pioneer of like it blending from like entertainment to like real fighting. And at the time, like I know this is before you, Sensei Nakai, but at the time, was this still considered in the public like? These matches are fake, or that it's wrestling entertainment, or were they thinking it's like real fighting and it's controversial, and was it sort of supported?
To be honest, I believe that professional wrestling would be different. I knew it was not real. The reason is, of course, you will see punches, kicks, bouncing off the rope. However, you will see other techniques mixed into Mr. Inoki's fighting style, which isn't really wrestling. Even then, he still won. A strong person is always fighting. I missed it because I was fighting for something I promised. Because I liked it, wanted to protect it. Professional wrestling was not something I could deeply pursue. That's quite a strong thing, isn't it? So I believe that if one truly fought, they were a strong person. So in that sense, I did believe that professional wrestling was real. However, instead of Mr. Inoki, UWF is a group established by Mr. Sayama and others. Up till now, I thought that the new Japan Pro Wrestling so far was a bit fake. Breaking away from UWF, Mr. Sayama had created a real fighting, Shooto. That's why I decided to go train there. So even though UWF was not broadcast on TV, it was only published in magazines. As it was filled with submissions, I thought this was a real type of fighting, unlike professional wrestling.
Thank you for sharing that. What was the public's perception of this though? That's my question. Like with the pro wrestling and then the fighting becoming like a Vale Tudo type.
So kind of like when you say, I guess probably the Japanese public, right?
Yeah, it's what I mean, sorry.
When I was a child, all my friends said that professional wrestling was a fake. We replied, no way. I was always fighting, so I thought professional wrestling was stronger. Hence, I fought all the time to protect its reputation. I was fighting the people around me. I was a person who protected professional wrestling. We wanted to protect professional wrestling. However, I thought that the previous style of professional wrestling was completely fake before UWF was created. But I think everyone around me said that. So we liked professional wrestling and tried to protect it. But knew it was different, so we couldn't stop it.
So like people would say, oh, it's fake, it's not like a noble, entertaining thing, even though people loved it, really. It's super entertaining.
In the past, since there was no MMA, I believe any strong fighters would have to work in professional wrestling as a job. So even if you believe they're strong or not, I feel like that it would just be a job. Now that there is MMA, a fighter can really make a living with their own ability. There was no MMA before. There was no MMA until Mr. Sayama created it. So I think the times had changed, and in that sense, professional wrestling and martial arts had completely separated. I think, as part of the original members, I myself understood it.
Wrestling, like Japanese wrestling, and then like, is it like this separate type of like pro wrestling? Is it catch wrestling, or what would you describe like how the wrestling techniques are developed over time from your teachers?
Professional wrestling is a show type of wrestling. In order to attract viewers, it is performed with exaggerated movements. However, the techniques used are real. Even with throwing techniques, these are real techniques, just performed in an exaggerated manner. That's why it's professional wrestling. And I'm not doing professional wrestling, so I was doing Olympic style wrestling. So it's fundamentally different. But surely the same thing in the past. There were people who tried to make it more interesting, and that became professional wrestling. Wrestling as a competition remained. I think the catch wrestling was probably what professional wrestling performed in the dojo. I believe when some more competitive wrestlers sparred, they would apply joint lock submissions. So it's something that remained like sparring in a dojo. Sayama tried to turn it into a competition. I thought it could be turned into a competition sport. So I believe there is professional wrestling, Olympic-style amateur wrestling, and maybe somewhere in between, submissions became a part of catch wrestling.
So what would you say the Japanese wrestling style is in that context, like in that professional wrestling context? What would you label it? What name would you give it?
A bit of Japan history. There was a Japanese wrestler named Riki Dozan that had defeated an American wrestler. It felt like the country had been reinvigorated, and everyone became courageous. That's professional wrestling. It is an exciting country where a Japanese fighter defeated an American one. That's why I think Japan is such a country for professional wrestling. So when it is said that it is a fake or matchmaking, that is a very troubling feeling. I think that the United States might be different, but Japan is about wanting to win and doing things properly. That's why Mr. Inoki fought with Muhammad Ali. Japan is such a unique country. Japan is a country that pursues the illusion of strength in professional wrestling. I don't think there's any other country.
Who, sorry?
Rikidozan.
Rikidozan.
Very
Very famous first
Japanese
Japanese
professional wrestler.
Oh, okay, okay.
Very
In America?
no in Japan.
In Japan, okay, okay. So essentially, all of this comes from like a hybrid of like Jiu-Jitsu or like Niwaza and then wrestling that Japan's developed themselves over time. Is that correct?
Oh, yes. Japanese wrestling is very affected by the United States. Yeah, the wrestling style itself, but maybe wrestling itself doesn't have much submissions. So the culture of submissions, for example, fighting from the back, is probably a jiu-jitsu culture that has been brought from Japan to other countries. Lying down and fighting newaza should be a Japanese idea. If you lie on your back, that is normally a loss in wrestling. However, it is not a loss if you lie on your back in Japan. So in that sense, I think Japan is a rich hybrid. It should have a big boom for jiu-jitsu in the United States and Europe. It was very popular in the Meiji era. That's why judo has spread so much. So I think that there is more or less effect in that sense. Especially, Japan is remarkable in that sense.
So like during that period, there was a little bit of changing of techniques in the Meiji period, do you think?
I don't know, as I was not alive at the time. Probably, while the jiu-jitsu schools fought amongst each other and with sumo wrestling, I think that the culture of finishing a fight with ground techniques was possibly developed at an early stage. There were jiu-jitsu schools famous for ground techniques during the Meiji era. If the disciples of those schools have traveled abroad, they would have naturally encountered and fought with wrestling. When fighting in those scenarios, naturally there would be an exchange of chokes. That could be called Oriental magic. It can be imagined that it may have spread widely, so I think that was probably already in classic jiu-jitsu.
It's very interesting. It's kind of like just the mixing of like America, Japan coming through and back and forth.
Okay.
So you're known as Japan's first Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. My question was, when you consider like Jiu-Jitsu is like a Japanese art from judo and from like the samurai times, and then it had come all the way from that to Brazil, and then coming back to Japan, and then considering even though talking about this topic, your background's judo and jiu-jitsu, it seems quite poetical that it's come all this kind of way back and then forward, and then you're the first Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt as well, you know. So my question is like, what are your thoughts on that exchange of techniques over time, which is quite quick at the end, and yeah, being the first considered the first Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt?
Yeah, after all, submissions and newaza ground fighting techniques. I truly believe it was deeply developed overseas in places like Brazil. That's why both Japan has a judo school called Kosen Judo. Japan also has deeply developed ground techniques, but especially in Brazil, in order to win in Vale Tudo, ground techniques have been deeply explored. In that sense, we were not able to keep up with developments overseas. I understood that, so I decided to learn this Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu myself and fought in competitions. So in that sense, I had a job of connecting Japan with the world.
I'd agree, like there's like a number of fighters over time, and especially like recently, like amazing grapplers that are coming out of Japan, which I wanted to ask you about a little bit later, like Rini Nakamura, and there's a few other like Olympic wrestlers that are like coming to the UFC now that are like amazing, you know. So yeah, it's very true.
タイロ
Tatsuro Tairo, yeah, he's amazing
増えてまして、
Well, Tatsuro is the student of my student's student. Para Estra Okinawa, and here's obviously Para Estra Tokyo. As a member of Okinawa, he is like my great-grandson. However, his age is around the same as my son, but Tatsuro is winning in the UFC. I do think he probably will get the title.
Following that question, just going back to the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, Were you awarded that through the IBJJF?
はい
Yes, it's
IBJF
an IBJJF
Yes, it is.
black
Yeah.
belt.
So what was the process in getting that?
It is so, as I don't have a teacher, so when I went to compete wearing a white belt, I was asked, "Are you truly a white belt?" It's not permissible to say I was a white belt. When I went to the Hawaiian tournament, Rickson Gracie said that I was not permitted as a white belt. I was told to compete as a blue belt and won. At the tournament award ceremony, Rickson Gracie told me to compete at purple next time. So at the next year's Pan Americas, I fought in Hawaii as a purple belt and won. I'd faxed IBJJF and asked how to proceed as I'd won purple belt last year. They replied, "We acknowledge you as a brown belt." And then I won as a brown belt. The next Pan Ams was in Miami, but unfortunately I had lost and placed third. But when I went to the World Championship, I won as a brown belt in third place once. I'd faxed the IBJJF on how to proceed. They replied that you can use the black belt. So my blue and purple belt were decided by Rickson. But I asked IBJJF for my brown and black belt. So I've never really formally learned BJJ. I write it as my black belt being received from the Federation from Carlos Gracie Jr. All I really could say is that the person who awarded my blue and purple belt is Rickson Gracie. Person who awarded my brown and black belt is Carlos Gracie Jr. While I've never really learned under them, we have shook hands. That's all I really can say. So for the time being, while I'm really a black belt, it really is a gift to Japan. However, I don't think it's a real black belt. In short, I just won a competition, so I didn't learn BJJ from a teacher. So I feel like I'm a fake sometimes. So I really wish to convey the message that one can become stronger by themselves. So Jiu-Jitsu is a tradition that you have trained under a teacher or lineage, but I didn't follow that tradition because I didn't have any teacher. So I really think my black belt is a fake, but I'm putting the belt on for everyone so I can pass out belts to those students that normally wouldn't get one. That's how I am. So I guess the history of Japan is a history that challenges without assumptions. I didn't follow Brazilian lineage, at least half anyways. Therefore, it has been acknowledged, at least in name. Mr. Gracie is a person who acknowledged.
That's amazing. So
素晴らしいです
so what about like your actual physical belt? Did you just go, okay,
本当の
Put this one on.
OPU
I got it, that's why it's official. But the belt hasn't really been received or wrapped by anyone.
wow.
Because I'm not a student.
Yeah.
I suppose.
So do you still continue to promote yourself then? Or like, can you move through like any further dans?
This is after the black belt. So the first, second, third, fourth degree, the sixth one this year. Because this is the number of years. This is the third year, third, fifth, and fifth years. So it has been 24 years as a black belt. 24 years later. It is counted by the number of years. If you keep registering as a member, the number of years accumulate as long as one keeps paying the annual registration fee. So that can be done. It's okay already. This belt is up to 6 stripes. Then next is the coral belt, which is red and black mixed. Red belt looks really old.
It'll be nice and fresh, brand new belt.
でも新し
Do you think someone will actually present you with a belt though this time to dedicate as a student?
You have to prepare yourself. Because I wrapped this belt myself, I'm kind of lonely because I don't have a teacher. Even with a promotion, I have to do the taping myself.
lonely celebration
いちょっと思いそう
Oh wow, that's fascinating. Okay. Well, I hope hopefully someone can actually come, you know? It's important. I'll contact someone. I
あ
should.
の火曜日
ありがとう
That's amazing.
Wow.
Moving back to yourself, with you training judo and jiu-jitsu in school, how did you, I know that you were interested in pro wrestling and also the Shooto scene, and your teacher is the originator of Shooto. How did you go, you know what, I want to go out there and I want to fight like in a complete no rules fight?
Shooto is the first MMA competition that segregates by weight class. So there was 60 kilograms or 65 kilograms. So it is the first fighting promotion that divided by weight class, just like the current UFC. Yeah, but it was not very well known. After all, because it became a real fighting compared to flashy professional wrestling, there were many fights that were not so flashy. So everyone may have paid attention at first, but given that it appeared boring, they had stayed away. It's not interesting to watch small guys fight. That's why it wasn't very popular. So although it was real fights, but I didn't understand, we seemed to be resented by the world. So when the Gracies debuted in the UFC, I believe they were our rivals. My seniors had fought in the '94 Vale Tudo Japan, but they lost before reaching Rickson. So I came out to fight in '95. Regardless of weight, as I trained in a similar martial arts with ground techniques, Kosen Judo, that is why I believed I could fight him. Although I was barely 70 kilograms, I did not think it was difficult to defeat someone over 100 kilograms. We were the only fighters in Japan that fought real fights. There's no way we thought we would lose. So even with a weight over 100 kilograms, we did not care about the meaning of that because we believed we were the chosen ones. So even with a weight difference, we were perfectly fine with fighting. We thought we would definitely win. However, I could not defeat Gracie. I think Gracie was a rival because that was everything.
And when did you become the welterweight Shooto champion?
I became a champion in 1995. It was the year before Vale Tudo.
So the year before the Vale Tudo 95? Okay. And when was your first Shooto fight?
In 1993, my professional career had ended in 2 years. I debuted in 1993 and got injured in Vale Tudo 1995. I was only active for 2 years as a Shooto competitor.
But have you done any any other striking or any other combination of martial arts before your first ever Shooto fight?
No, I haven't done any. I had quit the judo club in Hokkaido, came to the Shooto gym in Yokohama, and I learned from the coach in Yokohama. While I had been doing wrestling and judo, that was my first time doing striking.
Were predominantly the fighters back then fighting all also grapplers?
No, I think they were all strikers. There were only me, Mr. Asahi, and a few more of the grappling type. When it becomes an actual fight, things can get really serious. So Mr. Sayama wanted to groom fighters who could strike. That's how I felt. In other words, fighters should aim to be an ace that can make the crowds go wild through striking skills. It may well be that expectation was not met. Instead, as a grappler, it is a must to finish the fight with a submission. I thought that viewers would only understand a win by submission. A judge's decision is different. There pretty much were not any wins by submission. An absolute submission is something that the viewers would understand. I thought it was like a knockout, but there were not that many. Fighters were separated very quickly or made to stand up very quickly. As such, I thought it's very difficult to apply a submission.
Okay, interesting. Okay, and how popular were these Shooto fights in Japan at the time?
No, they were not popular at all. I got out of Vale Tudo because I was injured, and then Lumina Sato or Kaoru Uno had debuted, Sakurai Mock, Ensign Inoue, etc.
How many bouts did you have before you won the welterweight title?
On the well,
I had approximately 10 MMA fights. Maybe it's about 8 wins and 1 loss and 1 draw. My whole career I had fought in welterweight. Before that was around 5 wins. I forgot a bit. I think it was roughly that.
Okay. Were there some, I've seen your record online, is there some fights that weren't on your record that were just local shows? Or?
Honest, it is a bit difficult. There were matches in Shooto and Vale Tudo, some matches fighting MMA in a gi, so yeah, there were some fights not reflected in the official record. How to express my true feeling? The tournament matches, isn't it a special match? Compared to when I fought in Vale Tudo with no weight limits, I think normal matches and a tournament are a bit different. I truly believe that Shooto as a sport where weight classes are segregated would become mature like it is right now. However, I don't think it was well understood at the time. Hence, I ignored the weight difference and competed. That's why I don't think Vale Tudo is an official match. Tournaments are special. It's a different game with weight classes, just like competition MMA. This Vale Tudo is something special. It's another thing.
So the reason why I asked this question is leading up to the Vale Tudo 1995.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel like your level of experience and the amount of bouts and fights you had coming into this tournament?
Yes, I had very high expectations of myself. I really wanted to perform better in the fight. However, there was nothing to compare with at the time. There were no other groups doing what we were doing. The UFC had not adopted fighting with gloves. I thought that the future of MMA would be fighting with gloves and weight classes. It seems we were the only ones doing it. Because this was before the UFC, there was nothing to compare. So we thought we are doing the right thing, but no other organizations were doing it. As there was nothing to compare because we were the only ones doing it. So I thought this should be popular someday, but no one believed.
How did you hear about the Vale Tudo competition? Was it because your sensei or your teacher fought the year prior?
Vale Tudo Japan was a Shooto tournament. Rickson Gracie was invited and made a feature in order to make it more flashy. That's why it was called Vale Tudo. Although the rules were slightly different from Shooto, the timeline was different. However, the organizer was Shooto. To this day, Vale Tudo Japan is equally referred to as Shooto. However, at the time, we did not make it the format of a Shooto tournament.
I remember I watched the documentary a few years ago, The Choke, and there was like a fighters meeting and everyone was discussing.
チョークも見て、その
And coming into that competition, what was your outcome to like? Was it like a prestigious prize to win like about this Vale Tudo event in Japan at the time, or was it still quite like a unknown thing?
Indeed. Anyway, Shooto with different weight classes was not popular at all. By inviting Rickson Gracie, it would attract interest. I thought there was an opportunity to demonstrate that with Shooto. Therefore, my intention was, although I was strong, I was just not recognized. That's why I just had to do it. I definitely thought I was going to win. I knew I was going to make it to Rickson's stage.
What have you heard about your competitors during this time? I think online it was said that you were potentially maybe the smallest competitor fighting against like big wrestlers, like Olympic athletes, Rickson Gracie. Can you think back to like previous events in your life coming against to fight these like really, really big people and doing amazingly, you know? Like, can you relate to like other moments in your life preparing yourself and coming into that moment to fight?
Even now, within Shooto, I felt like it was only me. I went to the tournament, went and fought my best. But there's no guarantee that I will come back alive. So honestly, maybe on that day, so I fought my best, as if it was my last day. I survived, but my eye got injured. Although I didn't die, these things happen, so I was mentally prepared. My parents said it's possible you might die, so you should be ready.
Is that the Yamamoto? I can't know how to say the word.
山本魂
That's what it is, right?
でしょうか
The bouts you had on that evening, your approach to the tactics of what you're going to do in the matches, because you were significantly smaller and you utilized like a lot of like leg locks during these fights to good use.
When you look up to larger opponent, there's a risk you might get killed. I practiced slipping into the inside of the opponent. I would practice in a shadow alone for 1 hour. There was no time limit. There was no time limits. It's fine if it takes 2 or 3 hours. The striking with Mr. Gordo during the first match was fierce. I thought I could win by taking him down. That took over 30 minutes. It was a bit of a miscalculation. During the second match, they appointed a wrestler. That took a lot of time. I think about approximately 2 hours. I thought it would make the opponent tired after fighting for 2 hours. Luckily, 30 minutes was enough. As a small guy, my stamina would never run out as long as I kept moving. I thought the bigger guy would gas out faster. That date was very late enough to miss the last train. I thought it was pretty interesting to fight until the last train of the day. Perhaps this would be published in the newspapers. I did not believe that Shooto would be recognized by the world unless people were unable to return home from the Nippon Budokan. I thought it was good to end this ridiculous thing of fighting above your old weight class. I was the last fighter who had to. Afterwards, everyone could fight at 70 kilograms. Lumina, Kawajiri, Aoki, Tsurugenki. Everyone can fight at their own weight. There is no more need for large fighters. This was it. This was the end.
And then your fight with Gordo, like when you were having that bout, did you know, like, in terms of like damage with adrenaline, were you just sort of in the moment of just fighting and just trying to find a way to finish? Or were you like, oh, my eyes compromise in this fight right now? Like I'm trying to work out what to do. The rope, that's right.
なので、
Yeah, yeah. He's grabbing the rope
Hi.
to his leg. Yeah, yeah.
Rickson's match with Mr. Yamamoto also had the rule that they could grab the rope for some reason. It seemed to have been acknowledged by Rickson. It seems Rickson probably thought that was a miscalculation in the end. I grabbed the rope, he grabbed the rope, so I could not take him down. I truly thought you would be out very soon, but it took approximately 30 minutes. During that period, he poked my eye. In that sense, it was a very miscalculation. When I took him down, it should have finished the fight, and indeed. So in actuality, the plan did go according to plan. I thought it would finish probably in 1 minute. That was originally the plan. However, it was a miscalculation, so it was disastrous. I ended up getting injured as a result.
So after that bout, and then leading into the Rickson Gracie fight, what were you sort of feeling and thinking going into that last event?
The only opponent I thought I could really fight technique for technique was Rickson Gracie. All the previous competitors were much larger than Rickson. At last, I thought I could compete technique against technique. I thought I could finally fight a more normal physique. Still, I was 15 kilograms lighter. I still thought I could fight a match with technique against technique. Winning should have been relatively easy. Although it was easier, that probably was not a good idea to think that way because it reduced my likelihood of winning. I was very sure that I was going to win my way to Rickson. Once I reached that stage, I felt that my chances of winning were half-half. It wasn't really a good thing. I may be harsh on myself on my competitions.
So you're more relaxed coming into that bout than the other bouts with the bigger opponents.
そうですね。
And anything previously in your life, any moments in your life previously that aren't related to fighting, help you fight inside these fights?
It's similar to professional wrestling. The world just did not seem to be aware of these people seriously fighting. I was so angry. When you get angry, you will get a lot of energy. But the result was unfortunate. Sure, we had made it to the finals, but I think we have proved it, but I did not win. I think I've made a step to changing the world. In a sense, I believe that was the limit. After that, I probably wanted to go to the UFC. But after that, I wanted to fight the UWF fighters. I was not able to achieve everything. So after all, I thought getting angry would give you energy. I used to think that was a good thing. However, now I think that getting angry is petty. So that was probably my limit at that time.
Thanks for sharing that. Was there anything else that helped in your life previously that really helped prepare for that, or just because you're quite young, you just sort of experience it?
At that time, I still worked, and I don't think I had that much time. I'd hang out with my wife. It was great that she supported me. Before that match, my senior high school judo club captain had passed away. It was a club called Kosen Judo. It is a system where schools competed against other schools. As my senior had just passed away, I felt like I was also competing on behalf of him. He died just right before. If you ask me now, I recall that happening.
Thank you so much for sharing. I have
今日はありがとうございます。
はい。
I have a shirt that
Oh, nice.
I have yours.
Oh,
This one, huh? You see this one, this picture of you post bite. And this shirt, when I wear this out in Australia
オースト
or,
ラリアで着るとき、
or anywhere around the world, I lived in Vietnam for a little bit,
ベトナムちょっと住んで、
go watch an MMA event or UFC, or I go to the pub and
いろんなとこ
or
ろで
drink.
もこれを着てます
They
ね。
go, they go, who's this? Is this
これ誰ですか
is this wrestling? Is this what is this? And I explain like the lineage of like Jujitsu and wrestling prior to my questions to you before about like the mixing of techniques and then the history. So it's actually like quite usually it starts a really long conversation.
シュートの歴史を説明して、ちょっと長い話になりますね。
It's an amazing shirt. It's an amazing picture.
素
And
晴らしい絵です。
it yeah, I think this really encapsulates like the warrior spirit that you're talking about, right?
サムライスピリットを
Mm.
演じ、はい。
So I just wanted to ask, like, what are you feeling in this moment, and is it like beating a bigger opponent? Is it the story about the judo that you were explaining just before, and the passing of your friend, or is it just the warrior spirit? Like, what are you feeling in this moment?
After all, I'm doing this kind of thing. I really didn't know it at all. The thoughts of Shooto competitor, hey, we are doing this Shooto. Don't compare us to professional wrestlers. That's kind of how I felt. Therefore, it does not really look good. In short, is the world viewing us properly? It's not too different from being crazy. It felt like, hey, we are even stronger than famous competitors. Do you get that? But I can't help saying that, but that was the feeling at the time. Anyways, I was being reckless. Yeah, that is what's being young. There's a lot of fighters that act that way, talking a lot of smack like, do you know who we are? Anyways, that was an arrogant feeling.
That's amazing. I wanted to ask you about your student as well, Shinya Aoki.
シナオキについてちょっ
So
と聞き
there
ます
was a moment like in the 90s where he like it was like a fight where he like hammerlocked someone and broke their arm.
ハマロックをかけて
I think he's got a few submissions with a hammerlock
ハマロ
as
ック
well.
でサミッション結構
And he's considered like a controversial figure at the time, and I think he got some pressure like around this. And then like talking about Kid Yamamoto, I can't remember his
ヒ
name.
ット山本
Yeah, sorry. As well, he was considered like a controversial fighter. And this, I guess, is what you're saying, like being a little bit arrogant and whatnot. But do you think it's kind of justified, given like, you know, you're fighting someone in like a no rules context or like a very high pressure environment, you know, to kind of have these controversial antics to a fighter?
There is a lot of talking smack, even in UFC. There's all sorts of stuff just before the fight. But now, this is the business of mixed martial arts. So I think it's inevitable. Back then, there wasn't really an opportunity to speak. No one really knew each other, so there wasn't really any chance to talk smack. I'm not quite sure what I would do if I was a fighter today. There wasn't really such an opportunity, so in that sense, we had no choice but to show our strength in the fight. The competitors now fight with words. You can diss on Twitter and you can say anything, so I get that we're very different in the present era. The current competitors have to do various things to sell tickets. On the contrary, I just needed to win. Because it was easy. There were probably about 10 people that really knew me. The rest really did not. We knew who would win if we fought. Part of a good match is getting crowds excited. So things like talking smack is forgivable as a fighter today. These are things you need to be able to do as a fighter. Perhaps in that sense, we were like amateurs close to professional.
And I wanted to like expand upon like your eye injury. So you kept that private for like a long time. The reason was that to like help promote MMA and keep it alive without this controversy?
At this time, I knew that my eye could not see properly, so I did various eye treatments for about 3 months from a famous doctor. If my eye cannot see properly in the end, is it really a foul injury? It's a foul to poke the eye. I did feel like it was a foul, but at that time, there was a strong opposition to MMA. Ground and pound isn't real martial arts. There was strong debate against MMA. It may be unbelievable now, but it was said that MMA being so savage is not a competition. It was only that the opposition would increase. Hey, MMA is dangerous. Everyone asks, when are you going to fight again? However, after waiting for a while, and I still could not see punches anymore, so I really had to challenge Jujitsu. In a sense, I went back to training ground techniques. I was asked, are you running away from MMA? Sayama sensei told me to stay quiet. MMA would have been called a dangerous sport, hence I complied with my teacher. I just decided not to say anything.
I wanted to expand upon this topic because what you did is like quite noble. To keep that quiet, to kind
黙って
of,
て、うん
I know it's from like your sensei, but also like for the spread of the sport and what fighting is and the spirit of fighting.
格闘技のためですね。はい。
In Australia, MMA is still seen in the public as like a bad sport or like a
オーストラ
human
リアの方
cockfighting.
うん、オーストラリアの方はもう野蛮だと思われます。はい。
And we have a number of excellent fighters. We even have the world's #1 pound for pound fighter in featherweight, Alexander Volkanovski. The public and politicians, even the politicians would say he's doing a barbaric sport. He's not a real sportsman. He's not a real
チ
athlete.
と、うん
So I wanted to ask you like about like what's your thoughts on, you know, the public or thinking fighting is barbaric when, in my opinion, it really isn't. You know, and there should be some nobility for people that give their body or their life for entertainment.
Indeed, even when I think of today, it is an extreme sport. There are not many illegal moves. All the elements of martial arts is mixed in. using boxing and wrestling to fight. It became just like Mr. Inoki and Mr. Ali fighting. It became a sport which allowed all rules relating to martial arts. So it started from the place where the wrestling and boxing fought. It became a sport where techniques from all Japan's martial arts can be used. That said, when it comes to danger, I believe boxing and kickboxing seem to be more dangerous. I cannot really agree with that opinion. It is not limited to the best boxer winning, or the best thrower winning, or the best submission artist winning. In that sense, there is no complete portion. As such, it is not complete. There will definitely be a person who is stronger than me. Because of that, it's like a road. No matter how much you practice or train, it will not be complete. There will always be better and stronger fighters. I think it's closer to martial art than a sport. Therefore, it is close to philosophy because there are various ideas to define yourself. I think that such aspects are stronger than sports. So if you convey such aspects, it will surely develop as a sport, and it may be used as an education. I greatly anticipate its development.
And following up this question, Jiu-Jitsu and fighting globally has exploded in popularity. You know, got the Mark Zuckerberg and
マーク・ザッカーバーグとイーロン・マスク
Elon Musk, they're going to have this fight. What's your thoughts on like Jiu-Jitsu and fighting growing and becoming this like household thing around the world as well?
I'm still sure what we are saying is right. It would be so. We thought so. So I think it's our job to make people more familiar. And I'm still teaching one of the students. And I want to teach not only competitors and fighters, but also the various people. I think it is an important job.
Wow. And what do you see it being like in another 30 years?
I want to see it because it is familiar, and it should be. So I want the people are doing more to enjoy it, and I think it's going to be so useful for everyone in the world. From the very beginning, our small group of about 10 people knew that mixed martial arts would become something very major.
Is that kind of like the spirit of your studio? Oh, sorry, your gym, like the mixed martial arts communication?
ミックスマーシャルアーツです。
Yeah, I thought so. Okay, that's awesome. I wanted to quickly ask you about like the current rule set of like UFC, like that's the most popular form. Do you like the rules, configurations, settings, ring of this, or do you like the older Pride style, or like the Vale Tudo, Shooto original?
I think the various rules are just going to result in disagreements. So I think it would be better to do this as it is. I think one would get hurt if they got hit. I don't think it would be done like that, but maybe it's alright that way. I wonder if there are various things such as the style of the ring, with or without elbow strikes. Now, UFC in the United States and ONE FC in Asia's rules are a bit different. I think Ryzen is the only group in Japan to use the ring. Such a thing, if asked. Which one I like better is really hard to say. Every group can choose their own rules. I think that would be very diverse.
On that.
But even though like a UFC structure or like a current MMA structure is like a 5-minute round, it doesn't favor grappling as much, you know? That's like one thing to consider, like instead of having like a limitless bout time. Yeah.
I think so. That may be it. But if the match was made into 15 minutes, I think that might be a little bit boring and the number of viewers may decrease. After all, I think the current rules are good.
For me, it wouldn't. Someone that did a grappling. The general public, I get it. Yeah. What do you think of that match with Sakuraba and
桜庭と
Gracie?
うん
It is a little bit boring, but it's so long. So you're right.
長いんだ
That's why this organization is a 20-minute match. I think it's okay to have such an organization. So in that sense, I think that each organization will have more originality.
20 minutes とかね
20 minutes, yeah, I think that's good. Final question I have for you
最後の
is,
質問で
do you have any like advice to aspiring fighters in Japan or globally?
I think it is better to train various things. MMA will be all mixed. Because it is mixed from the beginning, it is difficult to see and it is mixed in various ways. So I think that it appears complete from the beginning, but there are still many things to learn from karate, boxing, and judo. So, if you get lost, you can tell yourself, the whole thing doesn't change here, so you can put in anything. It's really like a huge river. You can put in anything. However, if you want to learn things such as sumo, wrestling, it is better to train specifically in those areas. After all, no matter how much MMA is, I think that if you do only Jujitsu and ground techniques, you will lose. I think it's better to train various martial arts. The root of MMA will be the same, so you can put any technique because it's a good place. So I think it's better to train various areas without neglecting other fields.
All right, thank you so much for your time.
ありがとうございました。
That's good. This communication is also important.
Thanks again. Thank you so much. Thank you.
写真撮りますか？
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yuki Nakai's story is an absolute gem, and he truly is a modern-day samurai. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to see my inspiring podcast about the man who had cancer and still won one of the world's hardest jiu-jitsu competitions, you can do so right here. But before you go, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.